Today we are learning basketball with Corban Ford, host of Roundball, Rumble, and roster Reconstruction. You can find him talking and writing hoops all over the internet with Swish Theory, Basketball Intelligence, Pro 16 League, The Lead, SM. And, first of all, how are you doing today, Corb?
Happy to be here. Excited, as a guest. I'm over the moon right now. As a basketball fan and especially as a Lakers fan.
Absolutely. And, I can imagine why. So the Lakers land Luka Doncic. They send Anthony Davis to the Mavericks. I'm excited to just dive right in. But first of all, what the heck just happened? What are we talking about? Luka's on the Lakers. I mean, Kareem, Shaq, Powell, Dwight, LeBron, Anthony Davis. And now Luka Doncic. It's like, do teams ever get tired of just handing their superstars over to the Los Angeles Lakers? Or did the fans ever get tired of it? Don't you want like a little bit of a challenge going forward?
You know what? It's so wild to me because you're right. On the one hand, I do, right? On the other hand, I don't know, Shaq, in my mind, okay, being the Lakers fan here, there's some qualifiers, right? Like, Orlando messed up with Shaq. That's why he went to LA, right? And then Kobe was drafted, and, you could parse through. And then Dwight didn't work out. I could be that guy. And, of course, that is what people think all Lakers fans are. But, no, in general, I'm very happy because you're right. Like, just when we were trying to figure out, okay, who is our, franchise tentpole for the next decade, you had LeBron. The fact LeBron's given us, 7 years in LA is crazy, considering that he came in at age 33, right? Like, that's wild to me. But you went from, like you said, you start with Kareem, and then Magic, and then Shaq, and then Kobe. And then if you even skip Dwight, then you go to LeBron, since Kobe took the 20 years, then LeBron, and then you thought AD, and I guess it's really LeBron and AD, and now it's Luka? It's just wild how this turns itself out. This trade, I gotta say, I get the whole so-called Lakers tax that's been talked about, and I do believe it's a very real thing. But this trade right here makes me put a little bit of a pause on that whole theory. Because this is the opposite of that.
It just don't make sense. I don't even know where to begin with this. So the Mavericks are sending Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris to the Lakers. The Lakers are sending Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and one single little 2029 first-round pick to Dallas. Not 7 plus all these pick swaps. Not like this deal that Anthony Davis got in a return for that trade. Not like the James Harden package. None of these superstar packages. Just one pick. And the Jazz, of course, find a way. Danny Ainge just sneaks in there to add a few second rounders for himself. Jalen Hood Schifino as well.
He's like, Jazz, let's go. I'm so excited about that. I'm sorry. It should have been Cam Whitmore from the beginning. And that's all I'm going to say right there. Moving on. But, yeah.
Well, they had to, waive Mo Bamba after just acquiring him as well. So shout out Mo Bamba. But, really the real headline here is the Jazz waive Mo Bamba after acquiring him in the same day. That's what the people are talking about. But, man, I just don't know where to begin. I mean, the two things that stand out to me that are obviously, pretty big points are this is the most surprising, the most shocking trade in NBA history, possibly. I mean, I think it's very fair to call it any word you want. If you want to say it's the worst trade ever, I'm okay with it. And that shouldn't be viewed as a negative towards the player that the Mavs got in Anthony Davis, because he's still an all NBA caliber player. It's the player they gave up and the package they got in return and what they weren't willing to do to keep that player. There's only so many generational franchise cornerstones, guys that can lift you up and bring you to the playoffs, let alone the finals, almost single-handedly if you just give them a little bit of something to work with on a decent two-way team, a decent roster. There's just only so many of those guys. So the idea that you wouldn't be willing to pay him the supermax is just ludicrous, especially when the sources or reports coming out are that it's over his conditioning. I don't understand what that means. Are we not letting Luka just take your team to the finals? I mean, literally any team would trade just about anything for him, save for maybe 5 players on earth. They would give up just about any players and any picks to bring this guy into their organization. And it doesn't matter how much he weighed or what he's eaten before, what he's doing before, if he shows up and plays basketball. So that's the first thing is like, how could this team not, be willing to offer and pay him a supermax when other teams are like begging their superstars to sign the supermax just to stay? Like that's the whole reason it exists is so a Milwaukee can have a chance to save and keep Giannis in town by being able to offer him more along with some of the loyalty aspects involved. But like it's just out the window here. So like what's your take on the supermax element of all this?
I kind of feel like I'm going to echo all your words, Ryan. Like I feel like it makes zero sense to me. In my mind, you get if that offer on the table, give him that money because he's definitely proven first ballot Hall of Famer at 25. Like he's done more in his first 7 years of his career than most NBA number 1 picks that you've had in the past have done. And I know it's like just not even dramatic. It's crazy, right? Like he's done so much and is only 25, turns 26 next month? Coincidentally the same month that Anthony Davis turns 32. Like you do that. You give him the money and then make the trade later. It's not like we're talking, no disrespect, but we're not talking Zion Williamson, where there's like significant health risks that are already noted. And even then, you probably do that. You probably give him a contract with a bunch of clauses like New Orleans has, but they have an opt-out clause where they could drop him, and everyone their mama know that's not going to happen, right? Because it's Zion Williamson. So if it's Zion Williamson, who's a very good player, how much more so for Luka Doncic? If you're the Mavericks, what it would have made sense to do is, okay, we have the leverage here. We know we don't want you. We'll give you that, and then we shop you. To any teams available, listen, you get Luka right now. All 5 years. Yeah, you're going to have to pay a penny for him, but like you would have, in theory, have had to do that anyways. So that the fact that the logic isn't there. It's almost like I'm a big basketball GM guy. I play the game all the time. Like I know other people play 2K all the time. Like there's certain trades where there's no way this happens unless I manipulate it. And if I do, I have to tell myself, well, I did it because X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? Like,
even NBA 2K like would not offer you this trade out of respect for who you are as an Xbox playing general manager.
Right?
Like even the game would rule this trade unfair.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's hilarious to me to be in a spot right now where like this is real life. Like we are like 1 first round pick, not even both. If you're the Lakers, you could have if they said, hey, we're looking to trade Luka Doncic, Lakers pick up the phone and go, okay, hey, what are you looking for? Because that's interesting. You don't ask for LeBron, okay? Even if you did, I would have to think about it, but that's a different story. But like, fine. Okay. You Anthony Davis, ooh, that's tough, but we knew that was probably coming. If you had said Austin Reeves, Dalton Connect, the 2029 first rounder, and the 2031 first rounder, I'd have had to think about it for maybe a second. Maybe a good hot minute, because that is a lot. But then I would be like, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, Dalton Connect, Luka Doncic. Like to do all of that and say just 1 first round pick, I would have hung up the phone, Brian, we have a deal, brother.
It's mind boggling. I mean, I can probably count on one hand how many teams would not trade everything they have for Luka, or like it probably comes down to like Wembanyama on the rookie deal and a few franchise cornerstone superstars that are entrenched with their team that have earned that little bit of loyalty. A list that Luka would have been on yesterday.
Yeah.
So like Jokic, Steph, Shea now with the Thunder, maybe Giannis. Like I don't know how much longer that list goes where a team would not make the trade for Luka. He's just that generational. He's that much of a franchise lifter. He's a one-man offense that can get you to the playoffs. And as he's shown last year, to the finals in a match and win most matchups in those playoff series. So it makes no sense. And then like we've hit on already, like the trade itself, like normally you could get not just one exciting young star. I mean, go to the Paul George trade. I mean, the Thunder got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and 1 million first round picks. I mean, like 7 or something. I mean, go to the Harden trade. I mean, with Brooklyn, I mean, that involved a lot of picks. I mean, it's just crazy. Like what's crazy is the reports coming out that they did not shop Luka at all. That he was basically communicated with just the Lakers, maybe reportedly one other team. And maybe it goes back to the relationship that Rob Pelinka and Nico Harrison have, going back to Nike and Kobe and even Anthony Davis as well. And maybe those communication channels were open, and it was just luck of the draw in terms of who he decided to work with. Or, when you try to think what Nico Harrison was thinking with this trade, he talks about defense. He talks about Anthony Davis and the value he brings as a player. And to his credit, all of that stuff is true. It's just what you're giving up. When you look at the roster that's left over, the Mavs should be competitive. They have an elite defense. They're adding Anthony Davis, and Kyrie Irving's having one of the best years of his career, I think. And Klay Thompson is still a good shooter that might be bring a little less impact on the defensive end. But Anthony Davis and Kyrie, two all-star level players, if not better, and depth of defense around them. That's a good competitor. If you didn't give up, one of the best players to ever play the game to make it happen, no one would have a problem with that roster. It's just the idea that it feels short-sighted when Luka's at 25, entering his prime. Anthony Davis is at 32, injury prone, and
exiting that soon.
Exiting the prime in theory.
Great maybe, year this year, yeah.
Yeah, and he's having a great year, but this isn't gonna be top 5 for a top 10 player very many years after this. It's very unlikely that he'll still be that impactful just because of age and injuries. I mean, not everyone is LeBron, keeping that impact super high until they're 40. So it's just a very it's a win now move for an older, worse, injury prone player. And does the resulting roster make sense? Sure. It's just very I would say short-sighted in the sense that you have a one-man offense for the next 10 years ready to build your team around, and you're just kind of mixing it up to go for it all this year and maybe 1 or 2 years after that. And on top of all that, it just feels like there's something we don't know behind the scenes, that there's just some relationship lost there.
There has to be. No, I'm with you on that. There has to be, Ryan. In my mind, if that move is done and that's it, a stupidity of epic proportions. And I'm somebody who I do mock trade deadlines. I have frequent leave of absence in my mind where I'll be like, yeah, that could work. Listen, last year, mock trade deadline, a lot of reputable names in the basketball industry. I had a good friend I was making a deal with. I was the Lakers. I think I traded Anthony Davis in a 3-team trade for Julius Randle. And made that make sense in my head. And that didn't make any sense. I'm somebody who frequently will do these things and just oh yeah, sure, why not? And even I'm yo, absolutely not. There has to be, listen, it's some I know what you did last summer type ish that had to happen for that trade to happen and everything to be okay with it. Because you're right, Luka has to be maybe Luka the Don, there's something behind that. There has to be something we don't know about. Or they're that stupid, and I don't mean stupid disrespectfully, so let me take that back. But that dubious, there you go, of a talent evaluator to go, we're the Dallas Mavericks, we can win now and in the future by gambling on a 32, soon to be 33-year-old guard who's playing right now with a bulging disc in his back, a 31, soon to be 32-year-old big man who's had injury issues already and is out with abdominal injury as we speak. Who else am I missing? PJ Washington, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, Najee Marshall, Max Christie, who's a very good 3-and-D guy. He's becoming that, but okay. And yeah, Jane Hardy. I'm trying to think, what is the winning now and the future look like? Because you aren't going to be that bad to tank unless those guys miss a lot of games. Your draft capital is up there randomly. It's not it's a shirt. You're not getting Cooper Flag or AJ next year or anything like that. So sorry, I don't know. I'm so curious about what Dallas sees. I think I'm more interested in that than even the Lakers part of it, because I'm how?
Yeah, how? I don't know where the idea of how they could be set for the future. This to me is a very it reeks of like something going on behind the scenes with either Luka and the team management or even higher up with the ownership. Like there's a new owner in town. Mark Cuban obviously is not there anymore, and it feels like a new owner. Something happened between him and a player, and they just cut ties, and they just went immediately without shopping him, without trying to negotiate with the whole league, without trying to maximize the trade return. It was just like, can we go get another star that is good right now to stay competitive right now, and we'll figure out the rest later. And it just feels very reactionary, the move as a whole. So, it's I feel bad for Mavs fans because how often does any team get a Luka Doncic type talent, let alone you draft one? I mean, they got Dirk and Luka, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're not getting generational superstars just dying to go to Dallas. I mean, I feel for them as the fans. Like if something like that happened anywhere else, like I'm as a Magic fan, we saw Shaq leave, we saw Dwight demand out. Like it just sucks. Like it's same with
Losing
T Mac
Vucevic.
got tired.
I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
something like that. It's
But yeah.
almost there. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just terrible to think about. But in terms of the Mavs themselves, like I think they'll be competitive this year if everyone's healthy, and like they're betting on, like you mentioned, a lot of guys that aren't always healthy, and the defense is real, the shooting is real. They have two elite scorers, and Kyrie and AD and Clay. I don't think they're at the point of like not being able to compete in the playoffs. Like I think that'll be a fun playoff squad for this year. And then will it still be there next year or the year after? I think Kyrie has a player option coming up as well pretty soon. So that could flip on its head real quick in Dallas. And it's just insane. My brain has not wrapped around everything that has happened here. And, just two sometimes the general manager is doing the bidding of the ownership is something I'd like to say as well. That sometimes like he might just be the one negotiating the final deal, and it might not necessarily be his idea to just wake up one day and say I'm gonna trade away Luka to the lowest bidder. Like
Yeah.
it like I'm just gonna ship him off for no reason. Like normally that would come from higher up, in my opinion. But
you would think there's like safeguards in place for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, on a much smaller scale, it reminds me of the Oladipo trade, where Rob Hennigan dealt Victor Oladipo, Orlando's best prospect at the time, for Serge Ibaka to make a playoff push for a 7 seed, because if he didn't make the playoffs, there was a mandate that he might not return the next year, and they didn't make the playoffs, and he didn't return the next year. And there's some like personal things involved there as well, where their relationships are big in this league, and players that you scout, like Hennigan had scouted Serge Ibaka when he was over there, and worked with him a lot while he was with the Thunder. Nico Harrison worked with Anthony Davis as well, and worked with Pelinka as well back in their Nike days, going back a long time. So, obviously the relationships are a big part of the reason why this specific trade happened, between the history between the front office execs, the history between the players, Jason Kidd's history and influence with the Lakers as well. He was a part of that coaching staff with Anthony Davis when they won it all in the bubble. So, that goes back a while as well. So, man, I don't know what to say.
It's so much to
speechless.
say. It's wild just how crazy it is. I guess let me ask you this, RK. Like when you, because from Dallas' perspective, I feel like that's a much more interesting thing to kind of pull at, right? If you're the Lakers, though, and this is something I've been wrapping my brain around. Right now, I talked about this on with Sean Davis on Lakers Nation or Lakers Network Pod, where I said if you're the Lakers right now, obviously the big thing they need is a big, right? The big thing is a big. At the end of the day, Jackson Hayes is he's the answer. I don't want to know the question, right? So like I get that, but because you made that deal, you still have that 2031 first round pick. You still have pick swaps. You still have matching salary, whether it is a Rui Hachimura, a Gabe Vincent. Trying to think of other guys you could have that's in play, like available to make a trade, right? If the Lakers, in my mind, I go to Indiana and I say, hey, first round pick, give me a pick swap or two, get a couple seconds, matching salary, Miles Turner, you're a Los Angeles Laker. Like, that's what I'd be like trying to do, right? But in general, assuming the Lakers know, which we assume that they do, that their biggest need is a big, and they go to address that between when this podcast drops and Thursday. Also assuming February 8th, Luka comes back, some semblance of himself from earlier this year with LeBron. Do the Lakers believe that they are contenders for this year and the future? And more importantly, do you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think in terms of the trade itself, like you trade for Luka no matter what and figure out the rest later. Like he's that level of talent. Like he is the future. Like if you do have to take one step back to be 5 steps forward for the next 10 years, like that part's worth it. Even if, you do fall back a little bit this year. But they're, I think, the 5 seed right now in the West. They were playing pretty well, especially with Anthony Davis. But it's just one of those deals you can't say no to. So I do agree they need a center. They have plenty of playmakers between Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves and Dalton Connect can light it up as well. I like what Rui Hachimura brings as kind of a two-way impact guy, like good defender, good scorer. They added Dorian Finney-Smith, who Luka loves playing with, just a lockdown wing defender that fits right in there. So like they have a really nice roster with more depth we didn't talk about, but they need a big. And I'm not sure other teams are going to be very quickly to give them that big, but I'm sure they will be out shopping. And if they don't add anything, it would be a little hard to see them win it all this year because it's a lot of offense. You lose AD, your anchor, you lose your leading scorer. Luka's been hurt most of the year, or at least a lot of games this year. And, there's a lot to figure out on the fly with a trade deadline deal as big as this. But, also, like you said, if you had a Miles Turner, like he's probably the ideal fit in this team between his shot blocking and 3-point shooting, spreading the floor, pick and popping off of the LeBron, Luka, Reeves pick and rolls and pick and pops like that. That's about as good as it gets for that. And, maybe a rim runner to throw down some of these lobs that Luka wants to be throwing. Obviously, LeBron can do that himself. So I'm really excited to just see Luka and LeBron's chemistry. Like, from a basketball perspective, it's actually really exciting. That's what we love about the NBA is how quickly things change. And just the idea of getting to watch Luka and LeBron play together on the Lakers. I mean, it's just an insane idea that's super exciting, super fun. And, to the Mavs credit, if they're all healthy, watching Kyrie and AD and Clay kind of build a little something in Dallas could also be a fun mix because Kyrie and AD have been trying to play together for a long time, going back to all those Boston Celtics rumors. So that could be, will they have chemistry and handoffs and all that? Or will it be kind of the Kyrie show now and everyone else just kind of getting out of the way? Like, I'm interested to see how that 2-man game works because they have nice defense and shooting around Kyrie and AD, but do they have enough playmaking to really kind of set everybody up in the right spots? So that part I'm really interested in. But yeah, the Lakers should have, I don't know, a top 5, top 10 offense with everybody healthy here. They got JJ Redick at the helm to start coming up with things, and he's one of the smarter minds in basketball right now. So I would say if they get a big that can kind of be a little bit of a defensive anchor for them and at least protect the rim at the very least, and maybe either rim roll or pop for threes, if not both, they'll be pretty set. I mean, especially on paper. Now, will it happen overnight? I mean, even Giannis and Dame didn't happen overnight. So, it's interesting to see if that will kind of work itself out or, how soon that chemistry will develop. But yeah, I'm sure they are now, full on shopping for a center. And do you have any centers in mind that you think are a good fit? I know you mentioned Miles Turner off the top. They've been rumored for Vucevic, who we mentioned earlier. I don't know if he's a perfect fit for the defense, but at the very least, they could go all offense and and get some pick and pops and maybe have him do like Kevin Love type things that Love did with LeBron in Cleveland as kind of that 3-point shooting rebounder that can kill a post up mismatch here and there with all those other stores in place. So definitely not ideal for the defense side of things, but at least an option when you have that much talent that, why not bring his name up? But are there any centers that kind of caught your eye?
It's funny. With AD, I would have said I want the Lakers to get more of, and I get why they wanted like a rim rolling big, but I would have said more of like a pick and pop guy. Because AD wants to play, well, it doesn't matter what AD wants anymore, he's in Dallas. But, he wanted to play the 4, but like his offensive skill set is no longer suited to that task. Like his jump shot's not as consistent, like where he is, like he's better playing the 5 offensively in my mind. So I was looking at guys like Miles Turner who could play alongside AD, play the 5, but offensively they're more spacers, maybe like a Brook Lopez, guys like that then give room for AD to operate where he wants to at his preferred place, at the elbows, that sort of thing, around the rim, like that. With AD being gone and Luka being there, doesn't change dynamically, but the list of targets shifts a bit because we see Luka's done damage with a rim rolling threat, and not so much with the poppers. We saw that with the clumsy kind of Luka and Porzingis fit back in 2020, 2021. Like, that did not work really well. So in my mind, it's okay. Jackson Hayes probably does have a role there if he's not traded, because Luka has a way of making rim rolling bigs look good, right? But now maybe you look more at a Walker Kessler type. Now I'm still careful about that because Utah is Utah, and Danny Ainge is going to want everything. And I'm sorry, if I'm the Lakers, I just got a Luka at a discount. I'm not trying to then turn around and trade a bounty for Walker Kessler. No, I'm just not, right? But like I'm looking at a guy like him, maybe a guy like a Nick Claxton, kind of sniff around, see if he's available. If whatever trade I'm at, and this is where I get maybe a little bit greedy as a Lakers guy, but can I like sniff around and look for another guy as well? Like if I'm going to go to Chicago for Vooch, and I don't know how salaries work, I doubt this could happen with the money they have available, but I'd also be sniffing for Lonzo Ball. Like trying to see how that could work to kind of fit another need in addition to having that, right? And like Vooch is like a stopgap, but whatever. I don't like it anymore. I didn't like it really with AD. I definitely don't like it without him, but I can spin my head around it, whatever. If I'm going to Brooklyn, I'm looking at Nick Claxton. I would make a call for Cam Johnson, probably get swiftly cut because, Brooklyn has a high asking price, but I'd make the call, right? Like, those two, Claxton would be one. Miles Turner's still one for me. I just think he fits enough. You could take a chance on a Robert Williams. I wouldn't, but you could. Clint Capella's available. Maybe you look at him and Bogdan Bogdanovic and see something if something's there for you. Speaking of Portland, you could look at DeAndre Ayton. I mean, that's still a lot of money, but like, actually, I don't know if I like that one. But like, another guy in that like mold, right? Basically does damage around the rim, has a nice mid-range shot, younger, distressed asset given his, kind of general apathy playing in Portland. That could be something, and he is someone who can, finish around the rim. So those are kind of the bigger big man, I guess, that I'm looking at if I am the Lakers. Because you do want someone to maximize, the gravity that LeBron and Luka will generate. Somebody that can make a play on the offensive end there. I think ideally you still want defense, and Lord knows you need it right now, given the Lakers' current personnel, right? So, like, that's probably a bigger thing. For me, Miles Turner kind of clicks both. Decent enough at the rim, shoots the ball well, gives you some spacing. Lakers do need that. You just traded a pretty good 3-and-D guy in Max Christie. Can finish around the basket. Not great. His rim finish numbers aren't great, but like defensively values there. Other than that, sure. Claxton, if he's available, it's hard again because you have to match the asking price. And salary-wise, Lakers could probably do it. With the draft picks and such, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, all good shouts. Definitely like the Claxton idea. Kind of could be the Gafford of last season, I think, where he's, maybe not as incentivized to play his best self when the Nets aren't really trying their best, or at least not set up to actually compete very often. So it might be, a little easier to get him than it would be on a normal situation. And yeah, I mean, Rob Williams is a good shout too. Like I know he's been hurt, so he might be a little, not quite the Celtics version of himself, but just a defensive anchor type that can rim roll. I think does a lot for this team, and good shout with Max Christie as well. Losing him, isn't life changing, but he was a good player. He was showing some good signs for this team. Little 3-and-D, can kind of score a little bit, hustle a little bit. So, I think losing him is just one more player you have to replace in the rotation. So trying to find like a 3-and-D wing, especially with all these creators around, and a play finisher, both out to stretch the floor and stretch the floor vertically and horizontally, offensively. Because you guys, you have two of the smartest minds to ever play the game between Luka and LeBron, and they're going to find good shots for themselves and others. Two of like the most complete scoring creator offensive engines on the same team at the same time is just insane. So like finding guys that can finish for them and then also defend behind them, I think is pretty important at this point to really make a serious run for the playoffs. But those are all good shouts, and we'll see. I mean, they have some salary to work with now, as you mentioned, and they only gave up one pick, so they have a little bit more they can kind of throw in a deal to make it happen. I do think, like, because of where LeBron's at in his career, that trading that pick now that you have Luka set for the future and you're trying to maximize this team with LeBron,
Yeah.
doing what you can to compete now and contend this season is pretty important at this point, I think. So, like, you're set for the future. You don't like really need these picks for a team that has good young players in Dalton Connect and Austin Reeves, and all-time great superstar creators with Luka and LeBron. So it's time to find that big, find a little D&3 help on the wing, and you're looking at a real contender. And for Dallas as well, like, if they didn't have to give up Luka to get it, I like their leftover roster. Like, I think they'll. I might have mentioned already, but they have a good defense in place. They're adding Anthony Davis, who's playing at least at like an All NBA level, especially as a scorer and a shooter. The way JJ's unlocked him more so from the 3-point range, and Kyrie Irving's putting up some of the best stats of his career. Like, if you put it side by side with Steph, you might be surprised. It's pretty close to Steph, and Steph's an all-star starter, and Kyrie's not in the all-star game at all. But Kyrie's playing one of the best seasons of his career, and Clay can still shoot. PJ Washington brings some incredible big wing defense. Derek Lively's still that lob threat that can pop out. They add Max Christie. They still have Gafford off the bench now, I suppose, with all these bigs in place. So, I mean, they probably might want to try to find a better playmaker, like a creator. Like, to me, Anthony Davis has always thrived playing with a Rajon Rondo and LeBron, but like someone that can look to set him up as a play finisher rather than ask him to create everything for the offense. So, trying to find that could take them over the edge, but I think they'll still be competitive in terms of the short term, and potentially even contending if again, like, midseason trades just rarely happen to this caliber. So, like, expecting either team to find chemistry like that overnight and just be able to contend right away is asking a lot. But I think both teams are probably trying to do that, even though it's such a big shift of a trade.
Yeah, I mean, this is one we're having the reaction pod right now, right? And this is going to be something we talk about the days ahead. Reverberations across the entire trade deadline spectrum. Like, Jimmy Butler, who? Like, things are totally different right now. Going into Thursday, for the rest of the season, going into the off season next year, like, this is one of those type of trades. Massive seismic, reverberations across the league. So right now it's hard because we're still talking about it and trying to process it. And it's like, I just, the crazy thing is the person, I mean, like, wow. Like, I guess the one thing I can't wrap my head around is, like, Jalen Schifino is no longer a member of the Lakers.
That's the big one. That's what one people are talking about. And we didn't hit on the financial implications. It's a little bit of a conflicting reports out there on Twitter, but we saw a graphic that said, from Clutch Points, that said this deal cost Luka $116 million, where he's no longer eligible for the $345 million 5-year supermax with the Mavs because he got traded. Now, Keith Smith says he's actually able to sign a 5-year extension worth $295 million, which would be about a $50 million loss just by being traded. So, I would lean with Keith Smith, the Spotrac contract guy, over the Clutch Point graphics, but they do make some funny graphics. So we'll give them a shout for that.
They do.
Bobby Marks also weighed in and said that Luka's best financial option would be to sign a 3-year extension this summer with a player option in 28-29 to reach the 10 years of service and recoup any missed earnings, since the starting salary in that season would be $72 million. So, that could pay off for Luka, just kind of opening his options up then. And we'll see. I mean, I think he could just not sign anything and become a free agent, not this summer, but next summer, which I guess might have affected his trade value. That was a big part of the reason they traded him as well, was they were just worried. Maybe they just weren't confident in Luka for whatever reason that is. And they didn't want to pay the Supermax, or they were worried that they wouldn't retain him on that Supermax and that he would leave them for nothing. And that's why they got ahead of it now. That's at least what the quotes are coming out, kind of rationalizing it as. But I don't think there's one Mavs fan on earth that wants to hear that. I don't think, there's no one that says, let's kick the can and not keep one of the best players to ever wear the jersey. So, it's a tough pill to swallow for the fans.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And I think the argument as to why that'd be the case, because I agree with you, is even if that was the case, and you're letting go of him before he lets go of you for that, I don't want, again, I've seen this a lot, already, and I get it. It is reactionary. At the end of the day, Anthony Davis is a Hall of Famer, first ballot. Anthony Davis is NBA, all 75 team, right? Anthony Davis is, in my mind, somebody who should have been a defensive player of the year at least once in the last 5 years. Litigate that however you want to, but at least once, he should have been there. I think that Anthony Davis is a top 15 player this year, who's had a really solid season and increases usage to 30%, and all of that. This isn't Dale Davis we're talking about. No disrespect to Dale Davis, but he was a serviceable role player for a decade plus. Anthony Davis is a star. So boom. But Luka Doncic is a superstar. At this stage of his career, he's a super duper star. This isn't Anthony Davis at 25 and Luka Doncic at 25, which would actually be a little bit closer, maybe, in comparison. This is not that. So, for the Mavericks, it's a double whammy of, yes, you lose him. Whether or not you lost him because he's leaving first or not is a moot point at this point, because he's gone, right? The problem is, you lost him for that return. You couldn't sweat the Lakers out for everything? And the way it's framed, because Nico just went on in a press conference about half an hour ago from recording this, and sat there at the table with Jason Kidd on his right and said, yeah, nope, nobody knew about this. Jason Kidd didn't even know about this. I picked up the phone, I called Rob Blink, I said, what do you think about this? Rob said, we'll see. Probably hang up the phone, start dancing. That's right. Crazy to me that you threw out your first low ball ball. I could only imagine. It's hey, Rob, Luka's available. What do you think? And then Rob goes, yeah, what do you think about AD in a first? And he goes, deal, done. Hang up the phone. That's the only thing I can think of. But let's keep this on the hush though. That's it. So I think that's the bigger sticking point for me is, and I guess I want to ask you this, Ryan, and we probably won't know, so it's really just speculation, but hey, I like to speculate sometimes. Why did the Mavericks, and as a Laker fan, I guess I benefit from that, but why did the Mavericks specifically just target the Lakers? Were they that enamored with Anthony Davis this season? I get pre-existing relationships, I get all of that, but to target one guy when you could have done the same thing with Houston and said, let's keep it on the hush-hush, but I want Alperen Sengun, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, 2 first-round picks, matching salary for Luka Doncic. Now, the Rockets do that besides the point, but you could have done this with any other team for any other package, but they chose this specific player from this specific team that has its own collective confusion.
Right. It feels like bad team building process for multiple reasons, from not being willing to pay your superstar what he's worth. The idea that he's not just one of 20 stars, he's a top 5 player for the past 5 years and the next 10, unless something crazy happens. And that alone is one thing. And then, like you just said, just the idea that it's only one call. I mean, that's the type of trade that you would get in a fantasy football league in week 2 because someone's messing with you and you accidentally click accept or something like that.
Done that
like
before.
or like just somebody lowballing you just to see if they can snag Patrick Mahomes off your roster for like 2 of their backups, and it actually went through. Like, yeah, I mean, I come back to the like, something behind the scenes must have caused a rift where they were not worried about long-term process, team building process. They just clearly weren't trying to get the best deal possible. Like, that's not possible if you only deal with one team, or reportedly maybe a second team as well. Like, if you're not opening it up to all the teams and having something of a bidding war to maximize the trade return. Like, there's a million ways they could have been more patient with this, and they weren't. And yeah, I do think those relationships are what this boils down to. Like, whether it just like, obviously AD is playing well and he's healthy. It's one of his best offensive seasons, but like, that alone is not why you trade Luka. Like, it's, to me, it's got to be like the riff has forced it into this guy needs to be traded now, and the relationships led it to be, okay, we've done business deals before. I've worked with Anthony Davis and Pelinka and Jason Kidd before, and I'm just going to make one call and make this trade happen because this is maybe what the owner wants, and that's how it's going to work. And you can always rationalize it in the short term, but like, that's not what front office strategy process is about. Like, it's about having a long-term plan and, keeping your flexibility open for the future as injuries and talent changes quickly. And that's just not what was done today. So, or this weekend. So just insane to think. I mean, like, Luka literally like could be eating a whole pizza before a game like Hito Turkoglu before a Magic playoff game, and he could chug 2 beers and still go
2
out
left
and drop
shoes.
35. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you still sign that guy to the max when he's Luka. Like, that, it's unfathomable. And I don't know how you blame conditioning as well for everything like that. Like, maybe if your entire like team makeup, roster building, like the Miami Heat, I could see them doing this, and it doesn't make it necessarily any more logical, but I could see them having some sort of conditioning rules that Luka doesn't pass and they got tired of it. But like, at the end of the day, talent wins out. Like, you can have whatever ideals you want with your roster building, but when you have a talent that's generational enough to actually lift your franchise to the playoffs for at least a decade straight, you basically have to cater to that talent. Like, you don't just like decide for him, like, you're not doing X, Y, and Z good enough in my eyes. So, we're done with you. We're just gonna find another star because he's considered a star. Like, it just, the word like stars, like, all stars are not equal. Like, just because someone made an all-star game. And again, like, we're trying to be clear, this really isn't like tearing down AD as much as the player they gave up to get AD, because AD's great. He's all NBA level. He's all D level. He's an incredible scorer and shooter this year. He's just 32 years old and on the way trajectory down, while Luka is probably still on the way up and already has some of the most accolades of any player ever. So it just does not add up from any perspective.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the one takeaway I have from this. Like, however you look at it, however you kind of draw your conclusions from this, it's hard for one side to look and go, yep, that made sense in any capacity. For the Lakers, that's why I was kind of in the media aftermath of this. Like, everyone's rushing to give Rob Pelinka credit, and I'm not saying don't give anyone any credit. Like, I'm a positive person, I do believe in that affirmation and all of that. But I'm sorry, you could have called me with that offer to say yeah. Like, anybody. Like, if all you got to do is field the phone and say yes to one of the biggest steals, at least as of this point right now, knowing what we know in NBA history, there's not a whole lot there to object to. Good little piece of bargaining, good little piece of business from the Lakers. Not really. All they do is say yeah.
Yeah.
And stop right there.
It's interesting because teams have started hiring people with relationships over front office execs and like agents and marketing people. And it's kind of almost like a two-sided coin in this very trade. Like, one big reason you hire Rob Pelinka is all the relationships he's built over the years, and apparently this is one of those relationships. And you can go back to Boston Celtics trades back in the day, or like Kevin McHale sending Kevin Garnett to Boston with Danny Ainge. Like that's an all time trade, an all time, like you're landing a star in his prime, probably because of that relationship. And I think that part is underrated when a lot of us want to, play around with trade ideas, but we're not weighing the reality of what communication channels are more open than others and who actually wants to help who when it comes to team building. Because people have agendas, and people have, priorities, and they have goals, and they have friends, and they want to help those people succeed. And, whether it's someone they worked with prior or someone they played with prior, like those relationships are possibly as big of a factor as the actual trade itself of what's going to get returned, because those are probably the first people that get a phone call to make it happen. And
Yeah.
we're seeing it at the same, all in one trade, how hiring someone with a relationship could lead to you underselling the possible trade haul, and it could also lead to you landing a superstar without having to give up not anything, but without having to give up what it's worth for that superstar because of that relationship. So it's interesting to me, kind of the dynamics there that can kind of go both ways as pros and cons in the front office hiring process of, like, you can do it kind of the slow build way, like the Thunder have proven works, with a process, which is it's essentially the Sam Hinkie way without the brand and with a little less notoriety around it. And even the Magic or the Rockets, they're also like slowly collecting talent that are good basketball players that will build out a good team. But it just goes to show that sometimes all it takes is the right relationship and the right timing to make a massive trade done and overhaul. And maybe it is that Lakers privilege where they get that call first, or Celtics or Knicks, or one of these big teams, because a lot of these teams are in big markets, but essentially it's like the Lakers and everyone else when it comes to the brand, and like the big market teams, I guess, quote unquote. Like that's really all anyone needs. It's just like something about it, and obviously the profit involved for all sides. Like that's a big reason LeBron went there too, is to maximize his profit as a player off the court, whether it's Hollywood and movies, but also just the brand and jerseys and like the legacy of the Lakers. Like they are the most storied franchise for a reason. And, it kind of feeds into each other from both sides of never ending like that. That's the brand that, everyone can kind of reap the benefits of, from the league to the players and the teams itself. So it's just super interesting dynamics between, Nike and relationships and superstar talents just moving teams like it's nothing.
Yeah. You said it, and I mean, you brought up a point that I thought was really interesting earlier about team building, which is something you are big on, something I'm also big on, as far as, like, I guess, an area of study when it comes to basketball and how teams are constructed, kind of what they look for in trades, what they value, both for now and the future. I just can't help but keep thinking about what Nico Harrison said. He followed up with a text where he said basically the last four. He's thinking about the next 3 to 4 years is the future. Basically, he's not thinking about the next 10 years. He said that he thinks either him and Jason Kidd will be buried by then, or they'll have buried themselves. That was his quote exactly about an hour ago, which is crazy. But again, this is a GM, in my mind was okay. It's very short-sighted thinking, because if I have a player like that, I'm looking for the Paul George package, or at the very least, the Mikal Bridges package, where I'm prioritizing. Yes, I want players that are good now. Like, I should get a pick of the litter of players that are productive players right now, of juicy picks that will yield me productive players in the future, and of promising young, prospects that can give me something to look forward to down the line. Like, I am giving you a franchise guy, and I'm reaping from that the pieces with which to build my next franchise guy from a pool of different areas. And so for the Thunder, when they made that trade with Paul George, they got a treasure trove of draft assets, most of which haven't yet conveyed, but they've been able to use to, like, have available to trade or keep to make Godfather offers like they possibly could this trade deadline. But they said, okay, we want some players which will just take in the cap space. We'll also take that young promising guy, that SGA guy, and just have him to see who's our franchise guy. As it turned out, the promising young prospect from the other team was the franchise guy, but they gave themselves multiple avenues with which to do so, which I think is important, especially when you look at the Mavericks there, and it's okay, Max Christie, Anthony Davis, 2029 first rounder. 2029 first rounder will convey when Luka Doncic is 30, smack dab in the middle of his prime, barring something out of this world or horrific injury. Pick already doesn't look great. Max Christie, 23, 22, solid young player, but at best is going to be a very, very solid role player. That's 2. Anthony Davis, your big fish, was a superstar, is a star. We've already talked about the fact that he is going to be 32, has had already bad injury history all through his career, and that doesn't look good to pass with age. Also, think about the team fit, offensive, all of that, right? So, how you didn't give yourself really any avenues to find that franchise guy with a trade where you gave up your franchise guy, and that to me is what I will find is the most confusing of that trade, of how you try to spin it. In terms of, for the Mavericks, this is our return.
Right. I mean, all the eggs are in the Anthony Davis basket, and you're trading a top 5 guy for, let's say, a top 10, top 15 guy, where that's only true for the next few years. And
exactly,
it's a downgrade short term and long term. I could see how the fit is there in terms of this roster that's left over. I see the vision of what they're building. It's a fine roster. It's just what you gave up to get it. And like you said, they could have called Houston about Amen Thompson. I mean, maybe that would have been available. I don't know if they say yes, but I mean, Amen's been pretty great. That would have been a killer prospect to pick up, or could have called Orlando or Oklahoma City, just any of these teams that are full of young, exciting prospects and picks, and really loaded up. And like you said, kept that flexibility for the future and the now. And they just kind of went all in on the now, and guys that maybe, at least Jason Kidd is familiar with AD. Maybe there won't be as much of a learning curve with getting him into the system right away. And, maybe they'll have a tough defense, and it'll be the Kyrie show once again. And, I kind of am at least hoping, for Mavs fans' sake, that Kyrie AD 2-man game becomes something special and very fast, because otherwise, it's just, it's a lot of defense, which I love, and just not enough playmaking for the whole team to kind of have that balance. So I really hope that 2-man game becomes special fast, but it's tough to have it happen that fast. So,
I made a joke, kind of tongue-in-cheek joke. I said that Kyrie AD pick and roll game will be fun for all 25 games they share together.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Thunder, the Nets with Harden, Durant, and Kyrie. These guys are just injury-prone guys. They're awesome when they're healthy, and it's just kind of rare when
that's the case.
All of them are healthy at the same time. So, we wish the Mavs fans the best. We hope y'all somehow recover. I honestly don't even it's one of those things when you draft a superstar, that's it's like a family member when you lose him and you gain him. And it's one of those things. I don't even know if winning a championship fixes it, in terms of how the Mavs fans' outlook will be. Is there a chance the Dallas should win the trade? I don't think so, just because of the way Luka means to that city. He was the next Dirk. And I suppose if they win a few championships and Luka never does, then yeah, I guess that's something. But that's the business of the sport we live in, and it's a little more harsh than a lot of fans want to realize when it comes to rooting for their favorite players. And it's just going to leave a sour taste, but he is a great player, and hopefully, them being competitive over the next few seasons will, I think a couple championships could help. One, I don't know if it does, but it's just impossible to make up for the fact that you no longer get to watch this guy on a night-to-night basis when he was that special, and he was just ripped away overnight for seemingly no apparent reason. The stuff coming out doesn't make sense, so it's got to be something we don't know. But
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So I thought we might end the pod here on some draft talk, and I was wondering, what do you look for when you're watching film, when you're scouting prospects? Are there any certain type of traits or skill sets that really stand out to you that you think generally translate to the next level that you're looking for in draft prospects?
So I was kind of joking with you before we started. I have a type when it comes to players in general, and I skew to the offensive end. But primarily, I tend to like those guys that I don't know. You function high level shot creation ability upside. Like that's what I like. Like I think that at the end of the day, and I get it, defense is valuable. It's important. Playmaking is big. The NBA, as most basketball games, is who scores more than the other team. And I kind of boil that down to its simplest, kind of rawest sense. But I'm not looking for just pure scoring ability. Putting the ball in the bucket is amazing, right? But I think for me, you're a player that has good size. I think that's big. I do have my types, my Rob Dillingham last year, Boogie Fland in Arkansas this year. But I'm looking to really kind of identify specific offensive skill sets in players that can score the ball at different levels, but can also function, because of their more refined offensive creation skills as like a hub, for a team. So think like I guess I would say imperfect creators, whether that's like a Russell Westbrook, DeMar DeRozan back in the day, or like even Anthony Davis, or look more to the higher side of what that looked like with guys like Blake Griffin back in the day, and then Kawhi Leonard. You could say up to now. Can you create offense for yourself consistently? Do you have on-ball chops to be able to facilitate the offense? And yeah, I don't mind per se if you're a guy who's looking for your own bucket first and foremost, but I do wonder if you can leverage that great scoring ability to get other people involved. What is your defensive utility? You have to have some, I would hope. Like if you're just average, okay, but like, are you somebody who's aware on the defensive end? Are you better on ball? How do you play when it's off-ball defense? Do you fall asleep? Are you just a lazy, not engaged defender? Do you make the use of your physical gifts on that end? What are your physical gifts on that end? Do you know what I mean? I think those are kind of what I look at when I'm looking at prospects in general, and I'm still trying to refine that. It's gone through a lot of I would say turnover as I continue to watch the game and realize what I consider is really important. Was a big eye test person. I've learned to really kind of match eye test and obviously analytics and numbers and really what that looks like in a player that I think can succeed. So yeah, that's really I guess high offensive upside players who have utility at other places. Um, that's kind of what I really kind of center on when I look at draft prospects that like catch my eye. I'm like, interesting. Like, let's flesh out a little bit more. Let's kind of see more what he can do outside of putting the ball in the bucket. But if you could do that like really well, then yeah, I have my eye on you.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, super important to me to find guys that positively impact both ends and that make smart decisions with the ball in their hands and off the ball and just have good instincts, I suppose, for the feel for the game is what I should say. So, team first, two-way feel tends to be positive attributes for most players in this league. And so, I think trying to find, high two-way impact, even if it leans one way or the other, is the goal. Now, obviously, I think there's like kind of two sections to drafting, and it's the star hunting at the top of the draft, and then finding good basketball players to surround your stars the rest of the way. And there's varying degrees of it. Maybe at some point you're looking at all defensive talents instead of like maybe it starts with all NBA, then all star, then all defensive, then role players, or whatever order you prefer. But on top of that, every player is different, even if they fit into an archetype. So it's not a hard line that they have to do X, Y, and Z well. But generally, if you can defend your own position, you can switch a little bit, you can play a few different defensive coverages, you can on one end, and then on the other end, if you can shoot, dribble, pass, and score ideally in a couple different ways efficiently, like you're probably a good basketball player, and that can be scaled up to different roles depending on what you're good at and what's surrounding you in the roster context. So that in general is what I would say I'm looking for. And then, obviously talent is talent. Like I think the most important talent to look for as is that number one offensive engine the scoring creators like Luka Doncic or LeBron James or Nikola Jokic, where guys that can create advantages for themselves and their teammates and have that high processing speed to decide, am I going to score here? Am I going to draw the foul here? Or am I going to kick out or hit the cutter or hit the open man for a better shot? And those guys are top priority. And then maybe it goes down a notch to, high level scorers and high level defenders that can hold their own on the other end, where maybe you're 20-25 a game and a plus defender, or you're an elite defender who can at the very least hit the open three and attack closeouts or play finish around those guys. And then it gets down to good basketball players. So, that's kind of the full outline of the scouting process. And, there's a couple guys that have caught your eye lately for the 2025 NBA draft.
Oh, absolutely. And before I get even there, I just want to go like you kind of piggybacking off what you said, because even for me, I brought up those guys like DeMar DeRozan, like a Blake Griffin. Like some of these guys, we didn't know how good their processing would be as far as like, moonlighting as like, okay, like a pretty high-end offensive creator. Blake Griffin came in raw athlete, rebounded well, was averaging just over an assist per game. At his peak, whether it was the last year with Los Angeles and then with the Pistons, the guy is 18, 7, and 5. You're running your offense through him. He's that offensive hub. DeMar DeRozan, last couple of years in Toronto, and then really more in San Antonio, was a guy where, okay, you know what? Like, we are a baseline average level offense with him as like the sole guy. But we could put other pieces around him, and he could be like a quote unquote pseudo star. So for me, it's like the challenge of trying to see some of that is development, obviously, reps. But like, can you identify some of those traits where they come in right now as just a scorer, but hey, they can make a good read here. They're not as refined a playmaking processor as other people are, but maybe they could grow into that and be that 26 or 24, 25, 5 and 5 type guy. That's the guy for me. So, but yeah, going back to what you said about the NBA draft, there are a few people I'm looking at. And one of them, I mean, he's especially more recently gotten so much more not even notoriety, but just so much more conversation generated around him. He's definitely not someone I would consider as like a unearthed guy. I'm just gonna stop and not bury the lead. But Ace Bailey, right? Been big on Ace Bailey. Anybody from Swish there, anyone who listens to me knows that Ace Bailey is my type of player. Dude gets buckets, plain and simple. Best at getting in my mind in terms of creating his own shot. Obviously, there's his inefficiency. The fact that he doesn't get to the line often, and then when he does, kind of struggles to convert from there. Finishing around the rim's not super great. The fact that he seems to live on a diet of tough jumpers is an issue. But he is also very, very good at that very specific skill set. And it's not like he's not bad at shooting wide open shots either. So in my mind, it's okay. Look at a guy like that. Good at creating tough shots for himself. Let's flesh that out. It's going to be an NBA team that's not going to be Rutgers. Pretty sure they're going to be better than Rutgers. So probably get some more wide open shots. What does that look like? Defensively, the effort's there. I think he stays pretty solid on his man. I think his off-ball defense is not horrible for a guy with the stigma of being, just a score-first guy. So what does that look like at the next level? Is he going to be just as engaged there? And then the biggest thing for me as a weakness for him is the passing. Because Ace Bailey, first, second, and third shot is shoot, score, shoot. So like, what does that look like? Is it a lack of, hey, I just gotta take this shot because I don't trust my teammates? Is it I don't see my teammates because the vision isn't there? Like, what does that look like? How can we kind of extrapolate that out to really focus on him? So that's one guy that I'm really like big on because I'm high on him. He's been number 2 on my board for the longest time. I even pushed Dylan Harper back a bit when Ace Bailey was down, just because I'm sitting going, okay, at his highest level, I want a guy like Ace Bailey. And I know it's stubborn, but that was just kind of my own personal draft process I've been thinking about. So that's one guy. The other guy, we talked about him for a bit, but Boogie Fland. I think these small kind of spark plug offensive combo guards have me in a grip, Brian. Like, I can't shake him. I just look at how he gets to the basket. Look at his ability to shoot the ball and score. I love his effort on both ends. I think he's someone who tries to get after it, more of a pesky defender. You do worry about the size. You do worry about the frame. But I'm like, I look at him and do I see maybe a starting point guard? Probably not. Do I see like a really important combo guard for a team with winning aspirations at like the high end level of him? Yeah, I kind of do. I think a lot of that's based off his ability to shoot the ball because the utility's there regardless. And the fact that defensively, although he is small and his frame isn't huge, he does get after it and make it difficult for the opposing ball handler. So those are two guys that are big on my mind right now when it comes to draft process and the drafting that I'm looking at that are my type of guys. But I'm trying to see how I can kind of expand my own personal draft view, not to fit the consensus, but maybe to meet the consensus would be something. I want to kind of be in that general ballpark where I can kind of meet the minds of people and go, yeah, like you see what I'm seeing.
Right. Yeah. I think consensus is important for a few different reasons. I think it's most important for the draft itself to kind of know where the value is and where guys are expected to be selected. And then if you kind of prioritize someone else, like, oh, consensus says I can probably get him in the 7 to 10 range. I could trade down from the second or third overall spot, add an extra pick, and still get my guy around then, and that there's probably a little behind the scenes communication of who's going where to help with that as well. I would imagine normally, not everything is reported, but you at least kind of have an idea where teams might be leaning to be able to do stuff like that. So I think that's where consensus comes in. But otherwise, everyone prioritizes different things, and you want to have your own process. And also I think like you said, building that big board to kind of like be able to communicate with consensus and, like you said, just kind of meet other people where they're at and add their perspective to your own process is important because, like, at the end of the day, every person sees everything differently. Every scout sees every player differently. They're all looking for different things. They see different things. They value different things, and like the opinion and the perspective on each individual player is different. The teams that are drafting are all different. The way they prioritize different skills, different mindsets, different body types, all that stuff. So, a lot of things are different, but I do think, trying to, like, if you're really low on a player, trying to understand why others are high on him is important, and vice versa, to kind of like just be able to understand a little bit where the realistic potential development paths lie for just about every player that comes through. And on those two, I mean, Ace Bailey and Boogie Fland are super exciting basketball players. Like, wherever they fall in the draft. I know Boogie got hurt for the rest of the season. I don't know if that's going to help his draft stock per se, but when he was available, like he showed some, impressive shiftiness, like quick burst, tight handle, getting to the rim. Like he draws fouls. He's just a fun bucket out
Yeah,
there. He
that's
has
my
the,
yep.
like that. It's always fun watching those guys. He hit the pull up middies, could run a little pick and roll that way, and showed some good defensive instincts. Now, will that translate as a positive defender? I'm not sure because of the size, but he at least showed the instincts to make plays on the ball with, maybe stealing a loose ball and showing really good body control with the acceleration to kind of finish through contact and, potentially be a shooter and scorer at the next level. So, like you said, like maybe a 6-man type later in the draft. And I kind of think the missing the rest of the season might kind of have his stock drop to maybe lower first round rather than potential middle of the first round. And
Yeah.
that's kind of just how the injuries can come into play. But it doesn't really change his talent. More so, just changes his draft stock, and maybe teams that might have been a little more willing to take that chance if he had a hot run, maybe in March Madness or something like that. But with Ace Bailey, definitely, I mean, one of the more what's the word, like people seem to be very high on him or very low on him, and not a ton in between. I personally think there are like a handful of traits that are very clearly great traits that should translate to the league, and it all kind of comes down to expectations of what you want him to be. Like, I don't personally have him in the top 3 anymore because I don't necessarily want him self-creating everything that he does at the next level. Like, I think there are some worries with the handle to create his own shot. And as you mentioned, the passing doesn't really, he doesn't seem very interested in passing the ball very much. Like, he's looking to score.
No.
So those would
Yeah.
be some things that kind of lower him on my board, but I do think I'll end up with him a little higher than kind of where I had him on the Swish board, where like his defensive instincts, his defensive playmaking are really impressive. His 3-point shooting and ability to like tough shot making from any angle you can imagine,
Nasty.
really impressive. That athleticism is also goes into that as a downhill force dunker and making plays defensively jumps off the charts. So like these are things that should translate to the next level and be advantages for him at the next level. So to me, that results in like a D&3 guy with the upside to be a scorer who has athletic advantages to either get to the cup or hit pull up shots from deep. So that is a little lower on my board. I think he's still in the lottery for me, and we'll see if he can kind of crawl up back into that top 10. I do think I will end up having him there because like he's just a unique talent where like athleticism like that is a good bet to make for the next level, that he's going to have a scalable role now, and that like if you're expecting him to be a superstar who can just create everything and create the offense for everyone, you might be disappointed. But if you let him do what he's great at, defend, hit tough shots, store 3-pointers or shoot 3-pointers, and maybe set him up where all he has to do is score in that role, like that would be an interesting role to me to see where he fits. And it kind of reminds me of the Jabari Smith conversation from a few years back, where like he had these high expectations as a top pick, but he's still a really good defender, really good 3-point shooter who can hit a tough shot in the right situation. So I think there's something of a similar lane there for Ace to very, very much at least have like that. That's a starting level player if given the right role at the next level.
No, I agree completely with what you're saying there for sure. I look forward to seeing more of that development. And like I said, the passing is the most interesting thing for me because high school stats, I didn't watch a lot of high school games, so I can't say a whole lot. He averaged under 4 assists per game, and the quality of those assists and how that was done is differently. For Rutgers, no, he does not look to pass. I wonder like if that's just he doesn't see it or doesn't want to see it. One of those. Like I do think those are two different things when you're a player, especially a scorer of that level. With the confidence that a guy who shot 4-17 and then went 13-15, or something like that will have. Where it's like, yeah, I'm still the best option. If he thinks that, you know what I mean? So I do wonder about that moving forward, but I agree with you. And I love your analysis, you know that. So it's going to be one of those things looking ahead to kind of see how he continues to develop both at Rutgers, where he goes in the NBA, the team roster fit around him, and what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah, and like I haven't caught his most recent games. I know he's had a really good stretch recently as well. So I was gonna give those a shout, but I caught him. I just had it in front of me, but some of the notes that I had from that, it was. Give me 1 second. I don't know why I'm blanking on who they were up against. Alabama. I was going to say Alabama Rutgers. So he went off in the Alabama Rutgers game. Like I thought it was one of his most impressive games where he was flying around defensively, hitting tough shots, forcing turnovers, and throwing down hammered slams off those turnovers for pick sixes. So like that's a great game if you want to see the upside of Ace's two-way instincts in full swing. Like that's a good one to check out. And I know he's had some really good recent games as well from some of the highlights and that are rolling around Twitter. And he's a very tantalizing prospect, very polarizing prospect, I should say, where like people are just kind of all over the place on him, whether it's high or low. Like I think given his profile and his attributes, like NBA teams love a big wing defender who can hit tough shots, and that will probably be a top 5 pick because of those attributes. Like when it's all said and done, like no matter where you or me or anyone personally ranks him, like that's just he's been profiled as a top 3 guy this whole process, and having a few rough starts and a few like negatives isn't going to change the fact that what the positives that he clearly brings. And that's just an easy sell when you're an NBA team constantly looking for big wings who can do something, just bring a little juice on both ends of the floor. So that's kind of where I end up for Ace there.
No, I agree. He's definitely more Andrew Wiggins than T-Mac, but hey, that's still a player who can help you win a championship. So.
Hey, I mean, shout out T-Mac. You already know. And on Ace, like he just had a 37-point game against Northwestern, scoring 1.5 points per possession. He had a 30-point game against Penn State, 1.7 points per possession. 24 against Nebraska, 1.1 point per possession. 20 against UCLA. He had 39 a little while ago against Indiana with 1.2 points per possession. Like he's clearly capable of some of these big games where, he could go off for 4 or 5 threes in a single game. He can rack up 3 blocks here and there, 1, 2, 3 steals here and there. And, he has it in him with the upside. He's flashed it. So I'm excited to see where he ends up. And mostly I just hope it's in a place where the expectations are fair and that he's kind of given a role where he's able to thrive instead of having the entire franchise success rely on him doing everything, where I think people might be a tad disappointed by those results. But I hope, like, if like for example, if Houston didn't have Jabari already, that could be an interesting fit where it's just slide him into a DN3 role as a scorer, or one of these teams where he's just one of the guys that can focus on team first things like defense and spacing the floor and scoring when it's his turn or when the role is maximized, rather than asking him to create everything every time down.
Yeah, agreed.
So, was there any other prospects you wanted to hit on today?
Aside from that, not really. I'm excited to kind of get more. Hopefully the next time I'm on, I'll have, a whole new batch, whenever that is. That's a lot of fun to be on talking ball with you, Ryan. Love your work and everything. And so, as far as other prospects, still kind of expand my board. Hopefully, do this again soon. I will definitely want to explore Vijay Edgecombe, but I'm still trying to get my level of thoughts on him first before I go on that type of analysis. But yeah, other than that, I thought we did a real good job. It's a lot of fun. I'm still recovering literally on this phone from this news. Like, it's been insane, and it probably will be all day.
It's blowing up. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime deal. I understand. And yeah, Vijay Edgecombe we can dive into another time, but definitely impressed by his change of pace explosiveness. Like, I think that's going to translate to the next level on both sides of the floor. So he's definitely risen up my board because of that, and the 3-point shooting and development as kind of a decision maker in general. So very impressed by some of the scalable athleticism that Vijay Edgecombe brings to the table. And yeah, I'm hoping maybe we do a little Swish Theory draft talk as the draft gets closer. Could get some of the guys on, break down some boards. That'd be a lot of fun. So, hope to talk to you soon. And, we're an hour 15 in and we're still speechless of what just happened. So, it don't make no sense. But congrats really being a Lakers fan, getting to watch Luka and LeBron play together. You win again, you win again.
Just found the golden ticket, didn't even do anything for it. You gotta love it.
just
Lakers exceptionalism, baby. Lakers exceptionalism. Man. Excelsior. Yeah.
Man, you already know. Just woke up one day and Luka showed up. Like man.
Literally.
Just what the heck's happening? Well, thanks for hopping on, man. It was a lot of fun talking hoops. Have a good one.
Always, man.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.